Back at it, Studio 110.live. Looks like the sun is trying to come out of the clouds here in Bellevue, where we broadcast the big show here Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 Pacific Standard Time. If you're not following us on Instagram right now, like I say every day, what are you waiting for, man? Go to Instagram, IG. It's kind of catching on, right? Studio 110.live. We've got some funny interviews up there. Sir Mix-a-Lot giving me a hard time, telling me that I made him mop the floors and clean up the studio before I showed up to the show that day. And so there's some pure entertainment, not like other people's IGs aren't entertaining, but our IGs are pretty good. And shouting out all the guests that were on the big show yesterday. My guy Guy, who owns Trinity Nightclub there, an iconic nightclub destination down there in Pioneer Square, always doing it. Every time I drive by there, I see lines wrapped around the block. You know you're doing it when you got a club where the line is wrapped around the block. And Marquis and his artists stopped by yesterday for a good old Drop the Mic Mondays. But let's get into it today. Today is all about Tech Tuesdays. This show is all about fashion, music, nightlife, pop culture, breaking music news stories, and Tech Tuesdays. So I always enjoy Tech Tuesdays because I always know that there'll be some really smart people in the studio. And, we'll go from not to say that artists aren't or club owners aren't, but, it's definitely a pinnacle, an elevation to go from a Monday to a Tuesday. So I'd like to welcome my two in-studio guests right now on this Tech Tuesday show, Eric Lund and Bob Lund, who I'm sure had to cancel several other priorities to be in the studio today. So welcome to the show. I appreciate you guys being here.
Great to be here.
Thank you very much. I hear it wasn't too far of a trip to make it down here, so I'm glad it all worked out and you guys got here early. So I want to kick it off right now with Eric. You're a respected, well-renowned human being in your line of work in terms of what you do on a day-to-day basis, and that's a top-ranked esports player.
Guess you could say that.
Yeah, you definitely can say that. How old are you?
I'm 14.
14, and you're already a top-ranked esports player. Let's talk about that. So what age were you officially when you just got behind this?
Well, I started actually playing competitively when I was 13.
Yep.
It was right before my 14th birthday. It was April 9th, 2016. So I played the games casually because it's just for fun and stuff like that, and I thought I was good because I was a cocky kid. And then my dad here actually told me that I should probably test my skills somewhere, and by complete chance I found something in my area, and I went to it, and I did really mediocre, but I've been hooked on it ever since.
I don't know if you did mediocre. It sounds like you're just saying that to, you're a humble, respectful human being, but you probably did more than mediocre, I'm guessing.
It was actually, it's pretty mediocre. You have to get better over time. It took me a year after starting before I even got ranked in the top 10. But
and I'm told you're one of the best Smash Brothers players in the Northwest. And what's the credit to success for being at the top there of the pendulum, for having that kind of proper marker placement?
I play a lot. It's a really hard balancing act with my life because I'm younger and I have to work on school and stuff like that. So I have to maintain my good grades while still working at this. So I end up spending a lot of time and having most of my free time dedicated to this, just so I can improve and stuff like that.
Is that tough to kind of separate, the homework and, preparing for tests and, family time and, everything that you're doing on the gaming side?
Yeah, it does get pretty overwhelming sometimes because on top of all that, I have to balance my social life too. So a lot of the stuff that I end up doing revolves around that because I really have to work on my future as well. So.
And it sounds like this is a whole family. Your father, Bob Lund, here, is a technology executive who's also on the program today from 1 to 2 here for Tech Tuesdays at Studio 110.live. How often, Bob, do you have to come in and just kind of lay the hammer down a little bit and say time to back away from the esports platform and make sure you ace that math exam coming up?
Well, that's a good question. And Red Bull interviewed me recently when actually he was 13 and said, how did you let him do this? How did you, what was your thinking? And this is just his passion. I mean, I played basketball when I was a kid, and he just loves this game. And so for me, it's good because it's a competitive outlet for him.
Yep.
And we just laid down the law. It's, his grades have got to be good.
Yep.
In order for him to play, because he travels all over he actually travels internationally playing in these tournaments.
Wow.
And it's very time consuming. So he knows if the grades slip, the controller gets unplugged.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. It's like the old days, when they probably still do this when the cell phones were removed, where no social networking and all that. And I know that definitely hurts a lot of the kids and the younger age demographics when those things get removed. So Eric here, let's talk about the overview of the Seattle esports scene from your opinion, and I'm going to say your professional opinion.
Yeah, it's a nice scene because it's basically just located in the greater Seattle area, because most of the stuff is centralized there because it's pretty much in between where most of the players are, and so it ends up being pretty nice on the global scale. It ends up also being middle of the line. The attendance is good, the players are good, but it's not at that like upper echelon.
And roughly, what is the attendance?
Well, it varies, but some tournaments, like some of our bigger tournaments, get like 100 to 120 people a night, and then some of them get like 20.
Okay.
So it's just really depends on the venue, depends on the how easy it is to access, depending on the day, if it's like a holiday or whatever.
And there are people at school coming up to you and just like, I mean, you're probably the cool kid on campus, right? People want to be asking you questions and kind of pick your brain. Because, I mean, I don't even remember what I was doing at 14. I mean, I honestly don't even remember, don't even have a clue. I think I was maybe mowing the lawn and, cleaning. I mean, and you're a top-ranked esports player, which is super impressive.
Well, at school, I'm relatively shut in, but some people that do know about it, because not everyone does. It's mostly just the people that I talk to will get to know about it, but they'll ask me about it. They'll see me post about it wherever, and they'll ask me how I did, and typically it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So.
Will the teachers kind of pull you aside sometimes and say hey, it's really cool to have you in the classroom. You're a top-ranked esports player, but that history test, man, you've got to a B+ will not cut it.
It's happened. It has happened.
Yeah. How often does that happen?
It's happened twice this year, where it's just it's not like I'm doing bad in the class. It's more so that.
But you can just come a little closer to the mic for me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's I'm not doing bad in the class. It's just that it's not up to the standard that I've set for myself, because I try to put my grades a little higher than what it's supposed to be, and I'm in more advanced stuff. I'm in honors and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm sure you're getting a 4.0. Do they do that? I don't even know. Do they do? Is it 4.0 or do they just do grades at age 14? So
they still do. They do GPA because
okay.
it's high school. So.
There you go. So walk me through kind of a typical day for you. When you wake up in the morning, kind of paint me the picture from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to bed, and how the esports platform is built in. Obviously, it's not built in, during school hours, but, I'm sure you're thinking about it.
Well, I'm on spring break right now, so my routine right now is just wake up and then play the game.
So hours a day?
It depends. On school days, I end up playing a lot because I try to focus on my homework, and then I play until I go to bed. So I get home at 2:40, and then I'll finish my homework, get done at 3:30, maybe study a little bit, and then I play until 10. And
then I'm sure you have a line of buddies, knocking on your door like trick or treating almost, like Halloween, just like, hey, can I play with you tonight, or can I play this game tomorrow? I mean, I'm sure you have to tell people hey, my buddy John is coming over tomorrow, and you may have to wait a week.
It's up to the discretion of my parents, but.
So Bob, you're kind of the manager here. You're booking the calendar for the esports platform here.
That's right. I'm his agent.
You're his agent. Yes. Yeah. You're a good agent too. So yeah.
He spends a lot of time practicing, but he also sometimes he has to miss school if he's going on a tournament out of the country or in a different city, and we've had conversations with his teachers that other sports, they get out of school to go compete, and this is the sport he's chosen.
You're sending pictures of the history books, when you're in California, just so the pictures, so the teachers can be relaxed, knowing that Jared here, Eric. I said Jared because I said Jared and making up one of your friends' names when you were playing. That's live radio for you, but I'm sure you have to do your due diligence to show the school that the 4.0 is staying sustained.
Well, and the reality is, and this took a while for me to understand, is that esports is a sport. I mean, and if you look at University of California, Irvine, they have sports scholarships now. They have they have team esports for Dota, Overwatch, some of the other team games that are 5-man teams.
Yep.
and they're full scholarship, athletic scholarships. So I mean, this is a real deal.
Yeah.
And the money, the prize money, is for real.
Let's talk about that. Roughly, what is the prize money?
Depends on the sport. Like for certain things, like one of the biggest prize money games is Dota.
Okay.
And that's a 5-man team. The most recent internationals, TI7, had a prize pool of $20 million. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Wow.
First place got $10 million of that. So each person on the team gets $2 million.
Wow.
For winning that. Last place in the league gets, I think, $65,000. So.
And I took him many years ago to the Dota internationals, which are actually here in Seattle,
Yeah.
Key Arena, and $2 million for each person to win that tournament. I mean, that's the kind of prize money you get for winning Wimbledon if you're in tennis, or the Masters if you were into golf. I mean, it's as much money as any athlete makes in any sport.
There you go. Let's get into how can someone get into the competitive esports scene from the platform that you've built up, Eric.
Well, again, like last time, it really depends on the sport. So when it comes to the game I play, Smash Brothers, it's way easier because it's pretty much entirely built on a local scene. So locals, or what they're called, it's just tournaments that happen that are much smaller in the area. So you can actually just show up and then pay your entry fee and your bracket fee and just play. So you can get friendlies with a lot of the better players. You can just and play exclusively in bracket. It just depends. And then when it comes to the larger sports, you'll be much more confined to online play, like when it comes to team games, because a lot of venues can't really hold multiple teams of 5 to play each other, but they do exist. So when it comes to these like fighting games, I think it's a lot easier, but when it comes to the team games, it's a little harder, but it's definitely rewarding because it's fun. You get to build a community with the people you know and the people you meet in that scene, so I think it's a good investment.
There you go. What is Eric Lund's true core dream come true? What is your dream come true?
I want to win something big on the big stage because it's.
You can just talk a little more in the center of the mark. Thank you.
I have to get. I have a pretty big problem with nerves because I'm a little younger, so I get shaky when I'm on stage. But doing well is a really big success. You feel really good when that happens, and I've been to these bigger tournaments, and I've done all right when it comes to the global scale, but I haven't had that huge breakout performance, and that's really what I'm looking for.
And when do you expect that to be?
Could be soon. I've been improving pretty fast, especially in the confines of Washington, because although right now I'm 6th in the state, when it comes to current results, I could be 1st. So I think with the tournaments coming up, I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to be traveling in June and August to Southern California and Virginia, and then there's also a very huge tournament going on in May in Seattle, which I'm going to be going to, and I hope that's the one that I do well at.
There you go. And luckily, you mentioned June and August, so that won't, interfere with the school, with the school pattern of making sure that you're attending school. Bob, do you ever foresee in the future, the success that your son has built up and, the continued success that he's going to continue to have with this platform? Do you see it affecting school down the road? Do you see it like where there may be, where, he may have to, be able to kind of do almost the e-online, studying and not be able to go to school?
No, at this point, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that the other thing that I think has been good for him is that he's learned how to compete. And that's true of any sport. You get to a certain point where you get to your nervous point.
Yeah.
Okay, you're on a big stage, or in his case, maybe the first time he was on a live stream.
Yep.
A lot of his games are on Twitch. They're live streamed.
Yep.
And and so there's a lot of people watching.
Yeah.
All his friends are watching.
Yeah.
And then you got to get over that.
Yep.
And then you got to get to the next level to where you're competing against the best players
Yep.
in the country.
Yep.
And feel like you can beat them. You're
Yep.
not just there. So a lot of that is just kind of building confidence.
Yep. That's
and
what it's about.
it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, it's taken a couple of years for him to kind of get to the point where he can be comfortable in that stage.
Sure.
Which is, I think is going to help him in no matter what he does.
I think so
in
too.
his life.
I think so too. Just kind of seeing the way you carry yourself, Eric, and the age that you're at right now, and I just think the future is super bright for you. And I'll pay you a compliment, and I rarely pay compliments on this show, but I can tell you, hosting a couple radio shows, in my lifetime, being at my former station for 19 years, I would have recording artists. I would have artists connected and signed to record companies that nearly, literally couldn't talk, as well as you do in terms of formulating sentences properly and in terms of just getting info out of them. Some of these, you would think as an artist, the first thing that a label would do is put you through, how to talk to a radio host on the radio. It's just so, I see the success, pattern that you built up for yourself, Eric, and where it's going for you. You definitely have a bright future. Let's transition a little bit right now into kind of the whole kind of Nintendo side of the business, in terms of why Nintendo Super Smash Brothers is a great competitive game in your personal opinion, Eric.
Easy accessibility is one of the most important things when it comes to this kind of game. So allowing many people to get into it in a quick way and efficiently, and just being able to go in and out of the scene is really helpful. And also, the game has a really wide audience because it can be played as both a casual and a competitive game. So a lot of people that own the systems that have the game because they can play it in any way they want. So whenever they hear about the scene, they'll be like, oh, I have that game. They'll be able to play it. So.
There you go. If you're just tuning in right now, you're watching us, you're seeing us, you're embracing us. Studio110.live, the brand new radio show, Dirty Harry. Today is Tech Tuesdays. My producer Eric has got a whole great lineup of everybody in the tech industry, since where we broadcast from really is Tech Central. We walk outside of our studio patio here, and we look at some of these tops of these buildings, and they're all related to what's going on in the tech industry. In the studio right now with me, I got Eric Lund and his father Bob Lund. We're going to be talking to Bob a little later in the show. It's definitely a technology family. Bob is a technology executive who definitely has some experience under his belt. Eric, what new character are you looking forward to seeing on Super Smash Brothers?
Well, I like the current roster a lot, so I don't know if I really need much. There's a couple ones, but they're kind of out of the blue. Bunch of smaller indie games and arcade games that didn't really get the light, and a lot of issues with companies and ownership, because Nintendo doesn't have deals with all these companies. So as of right now, I just say I'm pretty much content with the current game and the state of it, as long as it gets balanced to where it's even better for competitors.
And in your opinion, like the platform that esports is currently at, where do you feel like it needs to ultimately adapt to? Like what new heights and realms does it need to do to keep you excited, to keep you, indulged in doing what you're continuing to do?
Well, there's a lot of things that the esports industry could improve in, but also at the same time, I feel like it's pretty well rounded. The community is a really important part, and the community also doesn't. Whenever the community doesn't like something, they're very vocal about it, and that can sometimes cause change that isn't needed. So there will be things that aren't too big of a problem, and a vocal minority will talk about it, and that'll mess with it, because the developers of the game or the people that are running a tournament will try to change this based on only what those people said, rather than viewing what most people want. And so there's a lot of ways to improve, but I think it's in a good state right now.
And what frustrates you, overall, from being a gamer and being a successful gamer? Like what's that one thing that just kind of irks you, that bothers you?
I'm happy with a lot of what the esports industry has done, because it's growing very, very rapidly. There's not a lot that really gets under my nerves, other than what I mentioned before, the people that complain too much about things that aren't necessary change. So I think most people just need to figure out a solution on their own, rather than complaining and hoping to get over some things based on developer support.
And what are, like, if you had to capture one thing that just gets you super excited and amped up, besides the obvious and playing the game and becoming better at the game, like anything else kind of on kind of the side niche that gets you excited about esports?
I like the social aspect a lot, because with my life, I spend a lot of time. I spend a lot of time practicing and doing my homework, so I don't have a lot of time outside of these social tournaments to make friends and stuff like that, because I'm usually at home. So whenever I go to these tournaments, it's an opportunity to see all the people that are in like Seattle, because you get people from all walks of life. I've seen the craziest people that are so varied. Some people that doesn't even look like they should be playing video games, that just show up, and they're great people. So
you can't judge a book by its cover. You never know. You never know. Someone dressed a certain way. Like I said, you can never judge a book by its cover. What was the last place that you traveled to?
Well, I mean, I go to tournaments like multiple times a week, so when it comes to traveling locally, I like lift to certain tournaments or whatever.
Okay.
So like there's been stuff in Bellevue and Seattle, and I go to like Tacoma. But whenever it comes to actual traveling, recently this year I've been to Southern California, I've been to Northern California, and I've been to a couple places in Canada. And I've in the past, in like 2017, I've gone to Eastern Washington and Idaho, and I'm planning to go to even more places.
And where do you go next? Do you know the calendar, or where do you go next?
Well, in terms of out of country, I don't have much planned unless there's a really big thing that happens in Canada that we can just quickly drive up to. But I am going to go to Southern California again because that's typically the largest esports hub when it comes to most games, not just Smash Brothers. They have huge teams in Overwatch and League of Legends and all that stuff. So a lot of the big stuff happens there. So I'm going to be looking forward to traveling there, as well as some tournaments on the East Coast. Maybe I'm mostly confirmed for Virginia because
cool.
That's my sponsor is going to be able to take me out there, and
Great.
I would like to go to a bunch of places.
Let's shout out your sponsor right now. I'm sure they're watching, so let's shout them out.
So it's Amity Esports Club. They're a great group of people. They really support me and a couple people that I know. So they're really good at helping everyone out, and they really improve the community aspect. And I really like what they do.
Do you ever allow like your fan base or people that are aware of you, Eric, to reach out to you on social networking to ask you your advice? In terms of them improving on the esports angle as gamers like you? Do you put it out there? Or,
yeah.
And what's a way for the fan base to connect with you, Eric?
I'm very active on Twitter, and I frequently do Ask Me Anything, so people can ask me questions on whatever subject, and I talk about the metagame a lot. So people that have questions about the game or have questions about the mentality aspect of the game, they can reach out to me for anything like that.
And I'd imagine multiple people are hitting you up probably daily and weekly, huh?
Yeah, I guess.
Is it hard to keep up with the with the inbox and responding back to these people, or you got a tap on the pulse?
For the average person, I'd say it's a little harder to keep up with the people, but I spend a lot of my time on Twitter. Doing stuff like that.
And what is your Twitter handle again?
Pandarian SSB.
Pandarian SSB. Okay.
Pandarian SSB.
Yep. And that's a good way for people to reach out to you, Eric, and they can ask you. Don't hit them with 52 questions, but I mean you're okay answering a few.
I'd be okay with that.
Yep. Thoughts on the upcoming release of Smash Bros. We talked about the Nintendo side in terms of the Super Smash Brothers is a great competitive game, but what's your thought process on the upcoming release of Smash Brothers for the Nintendo Switch?
To be completely honest, I haven't stopped thinking about it since it got released. It was a very crazy reveal, and it's a really huge step for me because I've gotten really far in the game that I'm currently playing, but being able to start the new game on a level playing field with my work ethic, because I practice a lot, so
yeah.
being able, because I joined the competitive scene like 2 years into the game's lifespan, so people were already ahead of me, but with this I can start fresh and start on the same level as everyone else, so I think that's a great opportunity for me.
How often are you talking to your sponsorship? How often are they reaching out to you, and kind of what's a typical conversation like that like?
Well, I mean, they're people. It's ran by someone within the scene, so they go to these tournaments, and I'm able to interact with them, and they help me out in a lot of facets, and they help me carpool to places. They help me with venue fees and stuff like that.
I see you got a Seahawks T-shirt on. Are you a Seahawks fan?
Yeah, I like the sports teams from around the Washington area.
Yeah.
I think.
Do you think we'll ever get an NBA team back here like we deserve? We were robbed a number of years ago, thanks to I'm not going to mention anybody's name on the radio here, but I still see and feel. Yeah, thank you. I still see and feel the effects of being robbed of an NBA team. I used to go to practically as many Sonics games as I could. So I don't know if you ever had the chance to do that yourself, but I thought I'd bring it up because you're wearing a cool Seahawks T-shirt there, and what are your thoughts on Richard Sherman, wearing a 49ers jersey?
To be honest, I'm not super into the whole sports thing. I just watch the games that they watch.
Yeah.
Well,
but
he used to be the greatest corner of the game.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure he is anymore.
Yeah. And when we saw those crutches on the sideline, and then then we saw what the 49ers offered him. I mean, it's kind of like little bit of a trifecta. You know, it's a little.
And the Achilles injury is a very serious injury, so it'll be interesting to see how he plays.
Be interesting to see. So I want to transition here, Eric, to your. Believe me, we're going to come back to you. We still got plenty of things to talk about today. But my other in-studio guest, Bob, if you just can come a little closer to the mic there.
Sure.
I got Bob Lund here, Eric's proud father, technology executive, because we are on Tech Tuesdays here at Studio 110.live, and like I always preach, and I'll continue to do it. If you're not following us right now on Instagram, IG, I strongly suggest
what
you
are
do.
you waiting for?
Exactly, Bob. I mean, from a tech executive like yourself, what are they waiting for?
What are they waiting for?
We're growing rapidly. I want to say, before the show signed on, and I'm very honest. That's the only language that I speak. We were like at 22 followers. Now we're damn near almost 2,000, and we've been on the air for 2 weeks. So I'm very happy with that. Thanks to Erica,
awesome.
the show producer here, and assistant who's doing very well with the social network. And so, Bob, let's get into everything here.
Sure.
You, my bullet points, my show prep here is telling me senior executive with not only Compaq, Hewlett-Packard, GoDaddy, and many other startups. So you're definitely not a rookie in this game.
I've been in this business for a long time.
Yeah.
So
How many years?
Changes.
How many years?
Well, I started with Compaq when it was a startup.
Okay.
So they were one of the first personal computer companies. And I watched that company grow from nothing to the #1 PC company in the world.
Yeah.
And eventually they got bought out by Hewlett-Packard.
Uh-huh. And, what was your favorite company from the Compaqs to the GoDaddys to the Hewletts to all your other startups? What's been like your favorite, since you've definitely been in it for a while, what's been your favorite experience?
Yeah, I would have to say the early days of Compaq were just a blast. I mean, if you haven't seen the movie Silicon Cowboys, I suggest you watch it on Netflix. It's kind of a documentary about the early days of the PC business, and it was a blast.
Yep.
And we were dealing with, are we going to go out of business the next day, every day, competing with IBM? And that was a lot of fun. It was fun to work at GoDaddy as well. GoDaddy has kind of a rich, interesting history.
They do. And I love, I know off the air I asked you if we could kind of touch on the iconic previous Super Bowl commercials that you guys definitely took part of.
Well, there's a good and a bad side of those commercials, and that was the founder's Bob Parsons of GoDaddy. He's a great guy.
Yep.
And he basically bet the company on his first Super Bowl commercial, which was a little racy. The GoDaddy.
But sometimes girls. Believe me, I know this, Bob. Sometimes you gotta get under the skin a little bit. You gotta do that to kind of put that brick, in the concrete.
That's what he was thinking. But so basically, hey, people are going to know the name GoDaddy after this commercial.
Yeah.
And he was right.
And he was right.
And so if you want to get an internet, address, you want to get your own website, you know what GoDaddy is.
Yep.
The downside is that a lot of women did not like those ads.
Well,
for obvious reasons. And so the company's kind of dealing with that. Right now, trying to get their corporate image a little more acceptable in this current environment.
But they can understand it was really out of fun, though. I mean, it's the Super Bowl commercials. I get that there's some edginess out there, and that you're gonna you want to get people talking. So I mean, he definitely got that.
He definitely got that.
He definitely got that,
and it really worked when one of his commercials got banned and they refused to run it. And that became, a whole thing because people would go on the internet to find out what was the commercial that got banned.
Yeah.
So that was the best thing that ever happened was them not running that one. So.
So you got your start then at Compaq. Compaq was kind of your launching pad as being a tech executive?
Yes. And that, like I said, that was the Texas personal computer wars of the 80s were quite the thing. It was Dell Computer versus Compaq.
Yep.
Dell was in Austin and Compaq was in Houston.
Yep.
And it was a real battle back in the day.
I remember back in the day, my personal computers, I used to use a Texas Instruments. I used to use a Texas Instruments at the house, and when I used to, play games,
those were good back then. Huh?
They were good back then. I used to have to, there was like a little cartridge, and you would, you'd have to slide it all the way in, and then it's definitely the esports side and everything else of the gaming side is definitely elevated from the imagery side to the platforms that they're putting out to you, the gamers and the consumers. So.
He doesn't realize how lucky he is.
People still do the calculator thing. There's kids in my math classes that pull out their calculators and play games on them.
Yeah, there's a video game hack for the TI calculator they give you in high school.
I remember that too.
Yeah, and in fact, the first portable computer that was really popular was compact.
Yep.
And so now everyone has a computer in their pocket, but back then the portable computer was 32 pounds and was about the size of a sewing machine, and people were thrilled they could fit it in the overhead compartment. So
yeah, I mean, pretty much that's how people did their weightlifting. That's how they got their that's how they got their exercise and every day. Juggle two of those. Lay in the hotel room bed and just put those on your knees and prop them up. So let's get into the history of personal computer and the dawn of the internet.
Yeah, so I try to teach Eric that there always wasn't smartphones. There was a day when they didn't exist.
Well, I remember the bricks. Remember the bricks that God forbid would give you brain cancer. The second you would answer the phone.
The
52 pounds.
The Motorola brick.
They were like this big. I mean, I've still tried to look for just a prop, a fun one.
I think that could come back, by the way.
I do too, and I think they will.
A retro brick size phone.
Put a red one out. Do a whole.
If Apple did it, it would sell.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was good fun back in the day. And Compaq got bought out by Hewlett Packard, who made a fortune selling ink cartridges for inkjet printers.
Yep.
They figured out that you could sell colored water for $50, and made a ton of money on that. So that was a nice little racket while people were still printing things.
Yep. And in tech news today, obviously we heard about Spotify today going public. What are your thoughts on that, Bob?
Well, it was a successful IPO, and Spotify's done great, and that their business model is pretty sound. It's good for them. I'm not so sure it's great for the artists, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
If you're a musician today, the only money you can really make is touring.
Yep.
So you got to sell tickets to concerts because you're getting such a small share of the streaming revenue. It's really kind of sad for the musicians.
Well, I want to, we have a lot of multiple platforms here at Studio 110.live, shouting out Ryan and his whole staff here. And Ryan is definitely a brilliant human being on the progression of social media and how that's equating to, people making money for everything that he's building with FutureNet and everything that he's continuing to build out. So I wanted to kind of talk about with Spotify, in-house, where we're building, things that are going to definitely change the game of the music business. We're talking about a future music. Because you and I know this, that when an artist gets signed today versus getting signed 10 years ago or even more, it's night and day. I mean, it's a completely different pattern. Now labels today, they're really just looking for one hit, and if they can get that one hit and market that one hit to radio, for the people that actually still listen to radio, which is far and few behind, but. It's more like you were saying. It's more of really kind of getting your pulse into the touring and the merch and the downloads and the ringtones and everything like that. Because when an artist signs with a label today, they'll take such a high percentage, so the artist really won't be left with much.
Yeah, and when I was at Hewlett Packard, we had iTunes we'd put on our PCs, and when I took over that business, I took it off.
Yep.
And I told Steve Jobs we were taking iTunes off of our PCs. He wasn't very happy, but we weren't making any money.
Yeah.
So we signed a deal with Real Networks that we were actually making some decent money on music. And so it's tough to make money on music. Once it went digital, and once it became very easy to pirate it, it really started to hurt the revenue streams across the board.
So you said that walk me through, because that's a fun experience, and that's probably a good story. You mentioned Steve Jobs, so talk about that conversation.
Yeah, so Hewlett Packard had the brilliant idea that they would also do an iPod. Okay, most people don't know this because it was a massive failure, but they launched a Hewlett Packard version of the iPod.
Okay.
And so in association with that, we put iTunes on the PCs, and the idea was, hey, every PC is going to have iTunes on it. It's going to drive more users, and people are going to use the HP version of the iPod, which was identical to Apple's version.
Right.
Of course, it was a massive failure, but it gave me a lot of interesting insight into how Apple does business, and they really do not partner well with other companies.
Yeah, yeah.
That's really just not in their DNA.
Right.
They like to do things themselves. They like to control everything themselves, and they've been very successful doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how many people have had the opportunity to have the one-on-one time with, an iconic figure like a Steve Jobs, who, I mean, look what he did in his days. I mean, from, the iPhones to the iPads to just, the iconic Apple brand continuing to elevate. And I mean, people still line up outside stores, for the new cell phone releases.
I will tell you this. I mean, and people have different opinions of Steve because he was a little bit of a tyrant, but that was just because he had a vision of how he wanted things to work.
Yep.
And if you look at the iPhone today, it was largely successful because he demanded that it be used with your fingertip.
Yeah.
That the apps had everything, all the gestures, everything had to be designed so you could use it with your fingertip. Any other company would have said, okay, we'll do finger, we'll also do a stylus, we'll have a keyboard, and then you lose the magic of the ease of use.
Yep.
That is the iPhone.
Yep.
And that's really, I think, what made it accessible to anybody who can pick up a phone today. They can use it. And that was not the case in the earlier generations of computers. You had to be a computer expert.
So I got Bob Lund on with me here, technology executive, the proud father here of Eric Lund. Eric Lund is an esports player. It's all about Tech Tuesdays here at Studio 110.live. Bob, in your opinion, what do you feel like just from being in the industry, knowing the business, knowing where the business is ultimately headed on the tech side, when we do talk about Apple, because Apple's definitely relatable to a lot of people, to pretty much everybody. Where do you see kind of the next growing kind of launch pattern for the brand itself in terms of on the cell phone side or on the computer side? What's that next thing that you feel like they need to do to continue to get the audience that they've done so well marketing and grabbing to ultimately get that next thing built and get out for the mass?
Yeah, they've done a great job, I think, so far. I mean, I think they've done a really good job. The Apple Watch, I don't think has been the hit that I think they wanted it to be, but they're learning how people are using it. So that's they thought, hey, this will be an iPhone on your wrist,
Yep.
But it's really turning out to be more of a health monitor, more of a exercise coach kind of a device.
Because don't people track their running, they track their
right.
miles on it, and their blood pressure, and weight loss, and
Yeah, and and over time it'll be more and more of a health monitoring kind of technology.
Yep.
Which I don't think was their intent when they came out with it. But you really never know how people are going to use a device once you put it into market. No, the next generation. I mean, I think they're doing a great job. The devices will continue to evolve. Price points, Apple hasn't been a leader on getting price points down. But if you go to India, I mean, you can buy the equivalent of an iPhone for under $50.
Wow.
They're Chinese made.
Yeah.
They're Google operating system.
Yeah.
And that's driven, a whole new generation of users in India that are accessible to people that have social media, applications, et cetera. There's just millions and millions of new users coming online. Because the devices are cheap and they've got wireless networks. I mean, they skipped the wired network phase.
Yep.
In a lot of these emerging countries,
Yep.
they went right to 4G wireless networks, and on the horizon is 5G networks, which I think we all can get pretty excited about. That's about 10 times faster than 4G, and that's starting. T-Mobile's deploying it right now.
Yep.
And that's going to enable a whole new generation of apps when you have that kind of speed in your pocket.
I've been a Sprint customer for many years, and every carrier definitely has their pluses and minuses. Sprint's coverage, it could improve in certain areas of the city and the landscape around. But like you were mentioning, when they put out the Note, the Note 8 or the Note 9 or just the different devices they're putting out, it's always kind of boils down to two things: on the processor side, the speed of the overall processor, and then how they just continue to demand, from what the customers are asking them in terms of improving the overall quality of these cameras.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the camera continues to improve. I mean, the latest generation of the Apple camera is fantastic. I mean, they've got a different optical zoom now, and it's quite good. But the thing about the faster network is, the old model of computing was how fast is the processor and how much storage do I have on the device.
Yep.
Once you get into these next generation networks, you don't really need any storage in the device. I mean, everything's in the cloud.
Right.
And in the processing speed, the microprocessors are so fast now, it's not really a limiting factor for virtually any software.
Yep.
So really, it's the speed of the network that kind of drives the usage model.
Do you feel like the price points are fair and according to what people are ultimately getting for what they're paying for? Or do you think that because I get it, you put something new out, you continue to jack the price up, but do you feel like that could come down a little bit to maybe make more of a little bit of a statement?
Well, that's the beautiful thing about competition is that if people want a device that's significantly cheaper than what Apple's selling, they can get it. It's just going to be a Google operating system device. It's going to be from a Chinese manufacturer.
Just get a book an airline ticket to Air China and go out there. I think we have direct flights here, right, to China.
The reality is all those devices are made in China anyway.
Yeah. What are in your thoughts and opinions, current trends in technology? I know we touched on it a little bit, but just more of kind of your inner thoughts and opinions on it.
Well, a couple things. I think the privacy issues that are happening right now with Facebook, I think are the tip of the iceberg of what I think is about to happen, which is I think that there's going to be regulation coming for companies that don't sell products. Apple sells products.
Yeah.
They make money when you buy a device. For companies like Google and Facebook, you're the product.
Yep.
And those type of companies are going to start to be regulated.
Yep.
It's been a Wild West cowboy frontier up to this point. But I think that there's going to start to be significant regulation on what kind of privacy information they can gather.
Well, I know everybody's probably either been sleeping under a rock or just not, don't care, about checking your news headlines on your phones. But there's been a lot of recent noise and buzz around Facebook with everything with Mark Zuckerberg. And I heard something interesting yesterday from an out-of-town guest here that we have at Studio 110.Live's headquarters that he mentioned. I don't know if you know about this, Bob, but something where Facebook has been allowed in the past, and I think they may have got away with it, to go in and almost kind of breach some sort of agreement, with Facebook customers and their contacts and some conversations.
Yeah, well, this is a little known fact, but up until 2015. Facebook allowed any third-party app developer. Okay, so when you get these little surveys, which Friends character do you?
Yeah.
So those are apps that sit on top of Facebook, and their policy was, if anybody in your friends circle downloaded one of those apps and used it, they would get all the profile information from all of their friends as well. Mm-hmm. So that became the property of that app developer.
Yep.
So you take that and you start to aggregate all that data. And you wind up with tens and tens of millions of very specific profile data, and that's what happened with this Cambridge Analytica that is now a big scandal that'll Mark Zuckerberg's going to be testifying in Congress just in a few days. But they did shut that down in 2015 and got rid of the API that allowed that data to be collected. But it's out there.
Yep.
It's already out there. And you think it's just what you posted, but Facebook actually, gathers a lot of other information. If you never log out, they get your browser information, they can get your phone information. And so if you haven't looked at your privacy settings on your Facebook account, I suggest you go do that.
Probably do that, yeah. Probably don't do it during the show.
Don't do it now.
We don't want to interrupt Bob and Eric Lund here, the amazing technology executive and Pandarian esports player and players that we have here in the studio. If you were, Bob, if you were Mark Zuckerberg, with the current position that Facebook is in right now, especially with everything that we're doing here at Studio 110.Live, we're coming in kind of with kind of that SWAT mentality almost, where we're coming in and we're going to disrupt a lot of things going on, in the old way of kind of the music management ways that labels, signed artists and everything on the social media platform that Ryan has touched on. Ryan Connolly has been on the show a few times, and looking forward to having him back here in the studio again soon. But going back to the question, Bob, if you were Mark, what, in addition, obviously he's got to do the testifying here coming up in a couple days, but what would you be doing to continue to, bring Facebook up, which I guess he ultimately that's what's going to make him happy, right?
Yeah, he's got a real issue on his hands, and I don't think they've addressed it adequately to this point, to be honest with you. they live and die on the trust of the people that use that platform.
Yeah.
That their data is going to be, you're opting in when you use Facebook. You know that they're going to be looking at what you do and targeting ads to you, but you did not know that your data was going to be, sold to third parties and wind up in the hands of...
Which is really bad. Yeah. Which is, I mean, people don't want that. They're not looking for that. Yeah. They're looking to just be able to have, like you mentioned, with the privacy settings.
Yes.
To be able to just, feel safe and feel secure and not have it, not have people, seeing information that they have no worthy reason to be seeing.
Yeah. And for all of you people out there that are using Instagram, thinking, well, I'm on Instagram, I don't use Facebook. Just remember, Facebook owns Instagram.
Yeah.
So, it's the same situation.
It's the same situation, yeah.
But to answer your question, I think he's got to own up to what happened, and I think he's got to get serious about addressing the issue. And I think he's got to rebuild the trust of people that their data is going to be handled properly by the company.
And do you think he'll be able to do that? You think he'll succeed with that?
I think he if he doesn't, this company is going to be in deep trouble.
Yeah.
I think ultimately they'll address the issue. But you have to remember, most people did not know that they were collecting this level of data on them. So,
and how did it get out? What was the? Because I know about it, but I wasn't really.
Yeah, well, this all goes to the Russia interference in the election. So there was an investigation of this company called Cambridge Analytica, which basically had this Facebook data.
Okay.
And they were using that data and those, all the demographics in that data to run targeted ads to try to influence people in swing states for the election. So, as part of that investigation, it came out that this data was out there.
So it's probably quite a surprise to a lot of people that that their information was like you said was being sent to third parties.
Well, and used to try by foreign governments to try to influence an election. So and this couldn't have been anticipated really. I mean, I don't think Mark Zuckerberg had any idea that this eventually would have happened with the data that he was collecting. But it did happen, and I think now it needs to be addressed. There
you go. If you're just thank you. If you're just tuning in right now, Studio 110.live. I got Eric London here, top-ranked esports player. His dad, Bob Lund, technology executive. If you know where they live, and you ever needed a tech question or you wanted to play with an esports player, that would be the house to knock on the door. We don't ever give out people's information where they live on the air, but I'm sure you have neighbors and family members watching and stuff like that. So I'm sure it's the most exciting thing happening in your neighborhood. I would guess, Eric, today. Let's get back into it with you, Eric. Who's your main character on the esports player platform that you're all about?
Well, I play a lot of characters because with the amount of time that I put into the game, I end up having a lot to do, and I become proficient in a bunch of characters. But I mostly play Meta Knight. He's from the Kirby series.
Yep. And we touched on this earlier, but we always have new listeners, coming in. But we didn't really touch on the side of the conversation. What are your personal recommendations and thoughts to be able to give to someone that's ultimately trying to develop, a strong, successful pattern like you've built up for what you do?
Well, I think one of the most important things to getting to the point that I've got to is balance, because I mentioned this a lot earlier, where you have to keep all the stuff that you've been maintaining in the earlier portions of your life, like school or work or whatnot. So you need to be able to keep working on that, and then also at the same time focus on this if you so please. So I think that's the most important thing.
Any thoughts, for the future, for you to develop your own game, for you to create your own game?
Right now, the future of my life is pretty uncertain. I don't really have a specific career path. However, I definitely would like to go into the gaming industry, and I think I have a really important message and
I do too.
Idea about these games and game development. So I'd like to be a director or something like that.
Yeah, just at your age, you're 14. Look what you've already accomplished. Just like you were mentioning, there's sometimes 20 people, sometimes 150 people, and for you to be able to, your comfort zone to be able to get up on stage and to be able to do Q&As or meet people or shake hands with people, whether it's upcoming sponsorship opportunities or whatever it is. I just think that it's really cool to see it from this vantage point at your age and what you've accomplished. So that would be kind of, if I was 14 and at the level that you were at, I'd eat it up all day, just to, to be able to track and, and have that fan base continue like they are, but to be able to like give them recommendations and thoughts on, you know, where you're at right now with the gaming industry, but how you see it evolving, because, you know, you can read about this and you can see it on social and in the gaming magazines, but when you get it kind of from a one-on-one, there's nothing better than that, right?
Yeah.
I will say this, you know, we mentioned the Dota 2 and the $2 million, you know, kind of prize money.
Yeah.
That tier of gaming, that's all those guys do. Okay, they're 5 guys. They live in a house. They train all day long. They're sponsored by Samsung or, you know, major corporations.
Yeah.
I mean, that is big time esports, and that is a full-time job. That's
Yep.
all those guys do, and it's super huge in Korea and China, and they field some great teams.
And it must make you proud as the proud father here, Bob, to watch your son, and because I mean you saw where he started and you see where he's at now, and just like I said, at 14 years old, you know, he said like he's not sure of the future, but you know, knowing you guys for the time that I've known you, I mean, I can only imagine, you know, when you turn 18, the level that the level that you'll ultimately be at, right?
Yeah, and he took me to the Dota Internationals. This was what, 5 years ago or something.
It was TI4, so
Yeah.
like 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah.
And I didn't know a whole lot about esports.
Yeah.
And it was at Key Arena here in Seattle, and it's the event sold out in like an hour.
That's like 19. How many people is that? 17,000 people.
And it was crazy. And so I had no idea, you know, that esports was that big of a spectator sport. And so I think, you know, by the time he's, you know, 18, I think you're going to see more of a mainstream spectator audience for esports. I think you're going to start to see, and Twitch is already doing this. They're broadcasting a lot of esports tournaments. And so the people that play this game, it's like anything else. If you play the game, you know, you want to watch it as a spectator. And I think that's going to be a next wave of kind of big spectator sports.
So Bob, what did people do, like, I'm not going to say the old days because everybody here in the studio is young, but you know, before Google arrived to us, how did people, you know, search for, you know, the closest mac and cheese, you know, destination for where we live?
There were these things called books. There was the yellow pages.
Yeah, I remember those.
So people don't realize there was search engines before Google. So I ran a company called Alta Vista, which was the #1 search engine on the internet, and they got displaced by Google because Google just did a better job. But we had a good search engine, and it actually wasn't a business. It was a research project from a company called Digital Equipment that we bought, and we found this thing. It was just a research project. It was like, look how fast we can search the internet, and it was a way to show how fast the computers were.
Yeah.
And you know, we didn't even think it was a viable business because you just go to a search page and then you leave. You know, where's the money in that?
Yeah. Yeah.
It turns out that there is money in that.
Yes. And that's not that's not surprising at all. If you're just tuning in or you recently tuned in, Tech Tuesdays here on the big show, Studio 110.live, Dirty Harry's brand new live podcast show. Follow us on Instagram, Studio110.live. We got Bob Lund, Eric Lund here in the studio for Tech Tuesdays. It's been a pleasure to have you guys in the studio. So, Bob, currently, where are you at right now on the tech side? Have you retired, or do you just kind of do it for fun these days?
Yeah,
or?
just pretty much for fun. I work with a couple startups in the area, doing mobile apps and a couple other things. But I'm done with the big corporate tech life. Now I'm just the agent for Pandarian.
There you go. Would anything indulge you back in, or it would really be hard to get you back onto a?
It would have to be pretty compelling. It'd have to be something that was, you know, really interesting and really disruptive to get that flow, that tech flow back into the arena. So what would be, you know, Bob, from your vantage point and opinions and thoughts? Your thoughts on just, we're here in downtown Bellevue. It's, there's a lot of tech going on here. How do you feel we need to improve what we're doing locally on the tech scene to, not to say that we need to compete better with other markets, but I think competition is always healthy. Yeah, I think this is a great tech scene. And I think a lot of companies, everybody talks about Silicon Valley, but a lot of companies are leaving Silicon Valley because it's just, it's too expensive, to be honest with you, for companies to get started there. But a lot of companies want to be there because a lot of venture capital. I mean, companies kind of go where the money is.
Sure.
And so you got to kind of have a vibrant venture capital scene, which, Bellevue and Seattle does have that. But that's kind of the key. And, you have an anchor company here in Microsoft. And it's important to have an anchor company like that because when people leave that company, they can go start their own company.
Yep.
And that's really the way Silicon Valley started, because Hewlett-Packard was really the first tech company that started Silicon Valley. It was Hewlett-Packard and Stanford University, essentially, that started that, the whole scene in Silicon Valley.
Eric Lund, back to you. I'm going to put you back here in the hot seat here. You are a top-ranked esports player, so everybody right now watching and listening, for people that are into the esports arena, the platforms, give us your thoughts and your advice to be able to just start off, for people that are in the introductory phase, to people that are in the advanced level, your thoughts and, ultimately your recipe for your recommendations out there for the fans.
If you want to get better at the game, seek help from others, because most people that are better than you for a reason and know what's going on in the game. So I think if you want to get better, get more into the game, there's a lot of people that you can ask, because everyone in the scene is very helpful.
And what do you think you could personally do to improve, the levels that you ultimately are trying to get to the next level at?
Right now, I think gameplay-wise and my skill in when it comes to the more physical aspect, which with being able to perform the techniques the game requires, I'm good on. I think the thing that mainly holds me back is my nerves, because I get a little shaky because, again, I'm young and I'm still, on the grand scheme of things, pretty new to the game. So it's hard for me to compete on a level that gets me scared.
Yeah. And when you found out that you were officially top ranked, like, just kind of paint that picture just in your brain. When you were told, I'm sure it was your father or your sponsorship that reached out to you and said, Eric, you're officially top ranked now. I mean, it must have been a great feeling.
Well, the first time I was ranked was a year ago, and there was a big reveal at the University of Washington. It had all the players. It had a big video and build up, and it had a lot for all the players. So all the people were there to see if they were on it, and I was there, and I didn't know what I was going to be ranked. I didn't know if I was going to be ranked at all, and they showed me at that last 10th spot in Washington. I was extremely excited, and I've only grown from there to the point that I'm at now.
I would imagine, Bob, it's kind of like, when you watch the NBA draft or the NFL draft and you get signed to a team, it's kind of like that same kind of mentality, right? That same, just like, wow, like I've reached that level that I've been ultimately trying to get to, right?
Yeah. That's how I felt. I got reached out to a person in the scene, and I've been reached out to in the past, but I don't think it's fit my needs, and this is the team that I've really been looking to be on, because it helps that social aspect as well as the other needs when it comes to flying out to other places or having money and stuff like that.
Well,
So
man, big kudos to you for where you've ultimately started to where you're at now, and I see your future being so bright. And I want to get you back in here. I know the calendar's been filling up, but we do Tech Tuesdays here every Tuesday, and it would be good to continue to have you guys back in to talk about just there's always new things coming up on the platforms, on the tech side and on the gaming side, that we can continue to talk about. Does your sponsorship, do they give you T-shirts and hats to wear at these events?
I do have a T-shirt. I unfortunately did not wear it today.
No problem.
However, I think they would have liked me to, but
Well, no, there'll be plenty more
they
opportunities.
do have a very nice jersey, for the record.
Really cool. You should have one that's framed, like, in the bedroom, and then you should have one that you wear. The sponsorship should be bending over backwards to make Eric Lund happy, because they should be lucky to have you. So it's been, like I said, it's been an honor to have you both here in the studio today, Bob Lund, Eric Lund. Thank you for putting it on your social and letting the world know that you guys are in the studio. I always like to end it with the proper respect, and we can't forget shout outs. So who wants to go first here? Should we let your dad go first, and he can do some shout outs?
Yeah, if you guys are into old school jazz, you can pop by the Soul Food Coffee Shop in Redmond next Thursday at 7 o'clock. I'll be performing there. So
really,
if you like
maybe if I'm in the area, I'll come by.
It's actually kind of a jam. So if you're a musician, you can pop by and just sort of open jam session. So
Great.
7 o'clock, Soul Food Jazz.
Great.
April 12th. See you guys there.
And for me, I don't have too much, but I'd like to especially thank the people that I've met in the scene, the people that have supported me throughout the years that I've been playing this game. I especially want to thank the people that are watching this for my Twitter, everyone who came here to see me on here. I appreciate it a lot. And finally, my sponsor, like I mentioned before, Amity Esports Club. I'd like to thank them. They've been only amazing to me, and they've really helped me get to that point that I've been wishing to get to.
Well, next time you come in, see if they can bring you in like a size medium T-shirt, and I'll wear one, and then we'll get a picture, and then you can send it to them, and we'll get some pictures here in the studio at studio110.live. And I don't want to make anybody, have to, start making special orders, but it would be a cool picture to be able to wear something that, hey, that you're wearing with pride for, for what you're continuing to build up. So thank you again, guys, thank you for coming in for Tech Tuesdays today. And like I said, tech is like Bob, you and I were talking about for the whole hour. It's always evolving. It's always reaching new heights and boundaries. So I'm definitely excited to have you back here in the studio to talk about anything else. Anything else that we?
Yeah, I would like to encourage everybody listening to go take a look at your privacy settings on your on all your social media. And I'm not kidding. Just take a look at it. Make sure you got it set the way you want it.
Yeah, and you heard that first on this show too, because a lot of shows they don't think of things like that. They don't have these types of tech outlets to be able to inform the listeners with the proper information. So I'm sure the second that came out, you did it.
I did it a long time ago.
You did it a long time ago, and it's benefited you probably well. You haven't had to deal with third parties hitting you up at 4 o'clock in the morning, right?
Exactly.
There you go. Thank you guys thanks for coming into the big show today.
Thank you.
Studio110.live. We're gonna, before we transition to our next guest, we're all about talking about music news stories and entertainment related subjects. So TMZ earlier reported that Safari Samuels was robbed earlier. It was a pretty serious incident. I guess he had, I'm not sure why he had it, but he had $183,000 of cash and jewelry on him at the time. He was robbed at gunpoint. Two armed gunmen both pulled out their guns and put the firearms to his head. And I have some audio of Safari on a station on the East Coast talking about exactly what happened. So Studio110.live here. We're talking about the Safari Samuels armed robbery, and this is he kind of paints the picture of exactly what happened on the street before this radio interview.
At gunpoint.
What do you mean just now? Just like right now?
A couple hours ago, I just got robbed. Like, two dudes with guns just ran up on me. Me face down on the floor with a gun to my head. It just took everything.
There you go. That was Angie Martinez out there reporting that to us here.
So Safari is my guest.
We're going to play it again here.
What's happening, first of all? Are you okay?
I just got robbed.
$183,000.
What do you mean just now? Just like right now?
A couple hours ago, I just got robbed. Like, two dudes with guns just ran up on me.
There you go. So I feel bad for Safari Samuels. He was just on his way to doing an interview like Bob here and Eric, and he was robbed $183,000. The police did catch these guys. They are in custody. It's good to know Safari's a good guy. I'm not sure. Maybe his normal security detail wasn't with him at the time. That probably would have prevented the armed robbery. But we hope that the traumatizing event that took place earlier in New York will ease up for him and his family and everybody around Safari Samuels. So hopefully he'll get that money back. I know that was a bit of a transition leading off from the esports arena and the technology side, but once again, I want to thank you guys for coming in on the big show today, and let's get you back here soon for another Tech Tuesday show. And if there's no other shout-outs, you guys are welcome to carry on to probably other important things that you've put aside to be here in the studio today. So thank you very much, Bob and Eric. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming in today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And other music news stories, we're going to try to get to them throughout the show today if we have time, because this is about Tech Tuesdays. But we can't forget about other pressing music news stories. Fabulous could be facing 5 years in prison. What did he do now? We'll be talking about that. Cardi B lands her first late night show. We'll be talking about that. 50 Cent flames up again in music news. Eminem goes ballistic. So we got a lot of big stories that we're going to try to cover here and talk about. We got our next in studio guest. I'm told here from Erica, my show producer. I'm guessing this is Eric Nueman, correct?
Yeah, that's me.
Eric Nueman, welcome to Tech Tuesdays here at Studio 110.live. You know, it's a live show, not a pre-recorded show. If there's a couple little tongue twisters here and there. So if you don't mind getting a little closer to the mic for me, I appreciate you coming in. I've got my buddy Aaron Lynn here, my co-host for Tech Tuesdays. It's been a great show so far. I just had Eric Lund and Bob Lund, 14 years old. The previous guest sitting in your hot seat there, Eric. 14 years old and already a top-ranked esports player. So this show is all about, music and fashion and nightlife and tech and, music news stories where, artists are getting robbed for $183,000 in their pocket. And our pulse is on every important major factor in the music scene. But I want to welcome you here to the studio. Thank you for coming in today. And thank you, Aaron, for making your way down the hall to be here with us today. It was a long walk down the hall, but you made it, and we're on time. It's we're only a couple minutes past. So, Eric, let everybody know about Eric Nueman here for everybody watching and listening to the big show here.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Eric Nueman. I'm a director of VR platform tools over at Digital Domain. They acquired my company Sprawly about a year ago, and I've been over there sort of running things and increasing the quality of the platform that we have available to the world.
There you go. And did you know this, Aaron, that our previous VR guests that were on last week's show, they're creating a VR special image for me. I think it's normally costs $10,000 to do it, and they told me I'll be the first radio, live podcast host to have one. So we'll be debuting that on the show.
Awesome.
Yep.
Like an avatar of yourself? Or?
Yes, an avatar, exactly.
Awesome.
Yes. I'm not like, I'm nowhere near Aaron or your level when it comes time to tech. I'm still learning it, but I've done my homework and show prep. So
Eric and I run in the same circles, but we've never officially met outside of being friends on Facebook.
Yeah.
Right. And so last week we had Eugene in.
Oh,
So-
great.
Yeah.
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 I was on his show a couple of months ago.
Yes.
I'm actually going to be on another show. I'm going to be on Gunter's Universe on Sunday.
Oh, really?
These are shows that take place inside of VR.
you can just talk a little closer to the
Yeah,
mic.
sorry. These are shows that take place inside of VR where actually I'm going to show up as this sort of crazy avatar
Cool.
of myself. Yeah.
Cool.
Now you actually went out to California to have your avatar made. Was that right?
Yeah, so I was down there anyway for work because Digital Domain has their main studio and office down in LA. And Doob was sort of looking for movers and shakers in the XR world, and I was down there, so they scanned me up.
Yeah. So Eric is a full-on celebrity in
I can
the
see
VR
that.
world.
I can see that. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you, and not only a VR celebrity. How many people? You're the first guest that I've had here on the show that's had the brand NASA attached to you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of like, it's more than, to me, it's more than just, oh, yeah, like you say it so kind of nonchalantly, so like, like it's not a big deal to you, but it's a pretty big deal to be associated with NASA. Talk about that experience of being in NASA.
So, I mean, that's where I did my internships during college, and I was there for 2 summers, and I worked on some stuff which I have mixed feelings about associated with drones, and I was kind of stupid and 18 years old and didn't really understand what that meant at the time. But the stuff that I did after that, I'm super proud of. I wrote some software which they actually still use today in mission control.
Wow.
Just a tiny little fragment, but still, it's
That's cool.
It's a bit of mission control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Tell me about can you talk about the drones?
I mean, the stuff that I was working on was about remote visualization, being able to see and understand what drones are doing. Unmanned aerial vehicles, right, is the official term.
Correct.
And the thing that we were working on was 4-dimensional flight control structures. So current air traffic control is all 3-dimensional, which means a point in space where the plane is, a point in space where it's going, that's it. So it all depends on a human being to not have planes cross those lines, which is a big mess because the number of planes in the sky is increasing rapidly.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. How close have you ever, had the opportunity to be? I know it's out of Florida. I know you can't get too close to it, but the launch pad, where the shuttle obviously, takes off from to go into space. Have you been in like the control booth? Where you hear like the cool iconic audio 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
I wish I was that cool. I haven't been to the launch facility. Probably my biggest claim to fame in terms of stuff I've been into is I actually got a chance to test out the vertical simulator, which is like sort of one of those VR rides that NASA builds.
I would love to try one of those.
I got to test that one for the moon lander about 10 years ago. And that moon lander is supposedly going to be built sometime in the next 10 years. So that was kind of neat.
And what was that experience overall? I mean, did you prep for it? Did you, prep,
I
probably don't need a big lunch before that.
No, but I feel like video games is kind of your theme today, and it was just a big video game. And out of all the people, including some other Air Force folks who were lined up with me to do this test, I scored the highest.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I can only say that it's probably because I play video games a lot, and it was just keep the crosshairs aligned, keep the thrust at the right level, and
So Star Fox.
I mean, Moonlander,
Well,
right? Like,
well, there you go. Sure. Okay. There you go.
that's really what it
All
was
the way
like.
back to Moonlander.
That's
There we go.
exactly
Yep.
what it was like.
Yep.
It was
So
playing.
when you say that you tested better, I mean, were you in line with like Air Force pilots and NASA flight crews, and you actually performed better than them?
I mean, yeah, we were
Wow.
we were not like this was a totally casual viewing. Somebody needed somebody to come in and do a beta test of their project, and I happened to be nearby, and some other friends were nearby, and a good number of people at NASA happened to be Air Force, so there were definitely some pilots there.
That's cool. You'll appreciate this, Eric. And I don't know, Aaron, if you've heard about it, but there's a new ride. It's down on the waterfront. It's near the Ferris wheel, and it's called Wings Over Washington. And it's this virtual ride. I've had the opportunity to do it once. They strap you in these with harnesses into these chairs, and it lifts you up. But then you're going over Mount Rainier. You're going over Lake Washington for the hydros. You're going over the biggest peaks and valleys. The Cascades and Puget Sound, and you're going over ferry boats, and it's really, really, really fun. I mean, I'm gonna actually do it again, hopefully next week. And I don't know if you guys have heard about it or done it, but it's definitely in the VR realm. And
It's like a motion chair plus glasses.
no glasses. You're strapped into this chair, and it lifts you up, and then you just start flying.
Oh, yeah. I did something like that at Disney a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
So in addition to, it gets bigger here, but in addition to NASA, I have here on my show prep the Ministry of Health of Belize.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Well, so I guess in between my last startup and then this one that I just sold off a year ago, I did a bunch of contracting, and somebody gave me a tap and they said, hey, I know you do sort of like weird software projects that other people aren't really comfortable doing. We have this problem with a program that we're doing, like bringing a bunch of money from the Inter-American Development Bank down to Belize. We need somebody to basically like get on the back of a truck and drive out into the jungle and observe this problem at these health clinics and figure out a piece of software and hardware combination to fix it. And I was like, hell yeah, that sounds glorious. So that's what I did. I ended up going down to Belize 3 or 4 times. And
How did you fix the problem? What did you do? What was the recipe?
the recipe was data, shortening the time cycle between collection of data.
You can take some water.
Thanks.
Yep. So if you're just tuning in right now, it's Studio 110.live. We've got Eric Nueman in here with us. Tech Tuesdays, of course, my buddy here, my co-host on the tech side of the show, Aaron Lynn here from Lineage Media and Solutions, just one of our conglomerates that we have here at Studio 110.live's headquarters where we broadcast from. But we kind of kicked it off with Eric Nueman being a celebrity in the tech VR world, and then you got your start like most people would dream for an opportunity to be able to do an internship with NASA, and now we're touching on the Ministry of Health for Belize, and sounds like they gave you the opportunity to go down there and correct a problem, and I want you to kind of readdress that for me.
Yeah, so I mean, basically what it turned out is that they had received this big grant to improve these health quality indicators, right?
Okay.
Like how frequently people are washing their hands, are they nursing right after birth, are they getting appropriate nutrition, stuff like this. But the only way that the IADB could measure that was from notes that were being taken by nurses on paper. Then people were driving out once a month to collect these stacks of paper, and then those stacks of paper would sit in the ministry for a few other months before they got collated into a sheet, produce a graph, and then more time until that person would go back to that facility and the data could get to them.
Gotcha.
So imagine if you were taking a class and you were trying to get your grades to go up, but you didn't get your grade for like 8 months after you took the test. It'd be really, really difficult for you to figure out what you
Pure
did.
agony.
Yeah, you'd never know what you did wrong.
Yeah.
So what we did is we built this app which people could use on a tablet, which worked offline. And then once a month, when that person would come by, they would bring a tablet which had all of their refreshed data, and they would suck all the data out of the other tablet. They'd go back to the ministry where there was internet, and so basically we shortened the timeline from about 6 months to about 1.5 months. Getting that grade back a lot quicker, hopefully helped them improve. After that part, I dropped out of the project, but they have the
As
tool.
you do, right?
Yeah, they have the tool now, so.
You did what you had to do. You went in there and you accomplished the mission, and
You're a coding ninja. You just get in, then you get out. That's the.
Yeah, we don't use that term anymore. It's kind of cliche.
Oh, yeah.
you put the Eric Nueman stamp of approval on the conflict that Belize asked you to conquer, and it sounds like you did it remarkably well. So congrats to you on that. And believe me, the list goes on and on and on. So you've been on the air here with us for 13 minutes, and we got plenty of more things to talk about. Anything that you want to since you're also a tech.
Hey, you're pulling out some good stuff here. I didn't know that you did Belize. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't sleep a lot, and I code a lot.
Yeah.
Well, what do you feel like the tech industry, Eric, needs that we're losing right now, that we just don't have our pulse on to the highest level that we need, not only here, in the city that we broadcast from in downtown Bellevue, Washington, but on more, on a local to national to international platform for tech and VR?
Man, what a question. So we did just lose a big player this past week, sort of a sad situation. This big, awesome company called Lytro, or actually, I guess not that big, but, sort of medium-sized player just got spun down in what appears to be a tech and talent acquisition, at least that's the official announcement, over into, we think, Google. I'm not sure if that ever...
Yep.
Yeah, it became solid. It was rumor for a while. And so this is sort of like a harbinger of the way that things are going, right? It's like it's really, really tough to survive right now as a small XR company, because people aren't really spending a lot of money on stuff other than, AAA games. People don't really understand out there what XR means just yet, so they're really tentative to lay in on hardware. So it's really, really rough. A lot of players don't make it past the first couple of months, and then the other ones that do, they get absorbed into these giant mega conglomerates, maybe or maybe not to see the light of day ever again.
So you constantly have to reinvent yourself and rebrand yourself and kind of come out with that, that real flashbang effect where you got to be competitive and know what the guys are doing across the street and just beat them.
And that's what Lytro did to begin with. Like
Right.
their first device it's a light field camera. Their first device was, I have one somewhere in the hall back there, that you would take a picture and you could adjust the focus afterwards. That's completely not at all VR, right? But then they took that technology to build into being able to do refocusable 360 video. And of course, the problem with that, though, is the expense of setting up that high quality of a 360 experience, and then the actual paying audience for 360 video is still severely limited.
The camera was the size of the back of a flatbed truck.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
And required a bay of refrigerated hard drives in order to operate.
Like, so, here at Lineage, we also have an Ozo, Nokia Ozo. Same thing happened. So when companies as big as Nokia is struggling with figuring out how do we make the tools to do 360 video, and then also...
So I think this brings up an alternative concept, right? Rather than trying to make that big, huge splash in your first moment, I actually kind of favor the idea of what I call a cockroach startup.
Let's talk about what in your opinion, Eric Nueman, what is a cockroach startup? What does it look like?
A startup that just won't die. It's small and like really, really fierce, but it just won't go away. It doesn't spend a lot of money. It doesn't necessarily be something flashy. It just keeps drilling away at the thing that it knows matters. And when eventually the world wakes up to XR and goes, man, this is the new mobile, this is the new computer, this is the new video game, this is the new everything, you're going to be there. You're going to be sitting on top of some tech that's really incredible. You're going to have your diehard audience of people that already love you, your core, usership, and then that's when you make that splash.
The biggest predicator for success, in my opinion, is being prepared for success, right? And so any kind of small company that's prepared for success, then when the opportunity comes, then it can grow. But if you spend all your money in the beginning and then you die out after 6 months, there's no way that you're prepared for success after 6 months. You have to grow and know who you are before then.
Yeah, well, like we just talked about, I think, from the tech VR side of the world, like you just said, even for the cockroach side of it, you have to kind of continue to come out with those platforms that people won't ignore. They'll want to surround themselves with it, from branding opportunities to marketing opportunities to sale opportunities to everything as a conjoined effort to to embrace what the inner companies as who they represent and what they're putting out on a major kind of playing level. But you just mentioned something a second ago, Eric, that's interesting to me is like when you said the world adapts or gets more acclimated on the VR side, and why do you think there's been that hesitation? Like why haven't we like as a whole?
I mean, a lot of it is just straight up lack of understanding and expense, right? So I think that one of the main things is that people don't have VR hardware at home. And so that's sort of like, to those of us who are diehards, I think a lot of people are puzzled. Why isn't there more hardware at home? The price is reasonable. But the issue is that the risk is still really high. The situation that we're in right now with VR very much mirrors the situation with computers or video games back in the 80s. They are somewhat reasonably priced, but the expense and the risk is really high. What if you spend $2,000 buying yourself an Oculus computer and buy a bunch of Oculus games and an Oculus headset, and then Facebook decides they don't care about it anymore? Well, that's $2,000 of your entertainment budget, for months that you just blew. So actually, I think that right now one of the things that's just starting to grow up, which solves this problem, is location-based VR, aka VR arcades. We've got some great ones here in Washington. There's one over in Ballard called Portal, which I visit all the time.
I have not been there.
Oh my God, it's great.
Yeah?
And it's like just the best way for people who aren't diehards to go. You spend like $5 or $10. You get to go in for an hour or two. They have all the latest and greatest hardware and all the latest and greatest games, zero risk.
Okay.
So I think that this is going to be one of the ways that people really, really get into XR. So that's on like the high end. But then we also have like just now we're starting to get saturation on things like ARKit and ARCore, right? 116 million devices out there in the wild. We just need that piece of content for that.
Yeah. Yep.
We're still missing that.
Yep.
XR doesn't have its killer app yet.
And when do you think that will happen?
I mean, I think we're really getting close to the boiling point.
So I think the killer app is actually Ready Player One.
Yeah.
Not the app in Ready Player One, not an actual game, but the movie itself, I think, is the killer app. Because you always have to have these touch points, cultural touch points, to be able to say, I want that. And now that you've got anyone, any business person, any investor, any consumer can go and see a movie and say, oh, that looks cool, I want that. That becomes the milestone that everyone's going to be driving toward for the next couple of years. And then when we get there, then we get there.
This is like one of the biggest reasons why my career took the trajectory that it did into XR, but in particular into XR tools, right? I work on things that make it possible for people who aren't technologists to make content. Because like there's this virtuous cycle between technology and audience and content. And if you don't have the content, nobody's going to buy the gear. If nobody has the gear, then there is no audience. And if there's no audience, then nobody wants the content. But if we bring that barrier down, make it easier and easier for people who are really the talented creators to make content, it's gonna catch. And I'm really excited. I didn't really get to work personally on Ready Player One, but Digital Domain handled a ton of the effects and the filming for that. So I do have some cool stuff that I can tell you guys about that if you're interested.
Go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah, so like I said, this is not my group. I work on the tools side, not on the filmmaking side, but I definitely have some good friends who are over there, and they build some really neat stuff. The way that filmmaking is increasingly being done is obviously digitally, right? Like most of any movie these days is done inside of a computer. But of course, the quality of performance suffers when your actors can't see the things and interact with the things that they're working on. Well, so Digital Domain has made some killer advancements in what's called previs, which is basically like the act of trying to solve this problem, where you put somebody on a green screen. DD happens to have one of the biggest ones in the world. That you put somebody on this green screen and you build a set around them which mimics the physical set. Usually it's coded in green stuff, it just looks like nothing. But for Ready Player One and for like a couple other things that they did earlier, they're actually starting to put actors in AR and VR headsets on set.
Wow.
So
cool.
while
Next level.
Yeah. So while they're being filmed, they are actually walking through a virtual set, the actual virtual set that the movie will then have them be in.
That's exciting. Wow.
On top of that, one of the big advancements for Ready Player One is this thing called VCam, which I got special permission to talk about for this.
Oh, great.
And is this the first show that you're going on to talk about this?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes,
Another exclusive.
Another exclusive, and my buddy Aaron knows that I'm all about exclusive opportunities. We've had several artists. We have several more artists coming in that are going to give us their first song to play before it goes out to like the world stars and to the big major platforms that artists, utilize today to get their music out. So the floor is yours. If you're just tuning in right now, it's Studio110.live. It's Tech Tuesdays. We do this on the big show here. Dirty Harry, my buddy Aaron Lynn from Lineage Media and Solutions. It's always a pleasure to have Aaron here in the studio. But Eric Nueman here, our special guest of the hour for Tech Tuesdays, has something that you definitely want to turn up the volume on the audio-visual presentation here that you're witnessing right now at Studio110.live.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, I want to say again, this is not my project. This is not something I worked on. This
No
is
problem.
just something that...
But it's the company you're with. So
yeah,
it's cool.
it's
Yep.
Digital Domain, but it's something that really impressed me. So they built this rig called the VCam, which is actually a physical thing that you can hold and move around like you were moving around a traditional physical camera, but it sees the physical world and the virtual space. So it's basically a mixed reality camera that a normal traditional director of photography or director of cinematography can use while they are filming and get both human performances and virtual performances together. And it's got knobs and dials that are physical and feel just like the ones on a real camera. And apparently the DP on the film really liked it. And the big famous guy who was making this movie, you might have heard of, also really liked it.
And who's that?
You guys know who he is.
Okay. All right. No problem. And what's the price point? What's the price point on something like this?
I mean, it's the kind of thing that comes with filming at Digital Domain. If there's custom hardware that needs to be built, we build it.
There you go. There you go.
Is this similar to like the HoloLens solution when they're doing the mixed reality with that? Or?
Yeah. It's similar underlying technology. It's for me, what's interesting is just like the form factor, right?
Yeah.
The idea of taking that kind of tech, which does exist, but putting into something that again,
It feels natural to a classic filmmaker.
yes, exactly. The same thing, right? Taking the tech barriers away and giving the people who are good at making content the ability to do that in a way that they're comfortable with. Literally physically emulating a camera in a cross-media environment. It's just like, it's so cool.
I mean, that's next level, and that's why we do Tech Tuesdays here, because, for some people are a little off the grid. They're not, up to the level that they need to be, but that's why we're here to indulge and give people the proper information. So, Eric, when your mind and your brain is not, in the tech day-to-day kind of business and strategy development that you've been very successful at, what are some other things that you enjoy doing outside of the tech world?
When is that? When am I not in tech?
I mean, your hobbies include developing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You want to talk about Strudel?
Yeah, sure, I can. I mean, mostly almost everything that I'm doing right now is in tech.
So you can't turn it off. You literally, like on a Sunday afternoon, you just can't turn it off. You can't go on, just completely do something out of your norm, like a shopping spree, or or a bike ride around, one of the many lakes here in our city.
I mean, I do get out and enjoy nature a bit. I live up in Edmonds, which is beautiful. There's lots of fun places
It is
to,
nice
to
up there.
walk around. But
It is nice.
yeah, I mean, on a typical Sunday, I'm going to be at home working on my side project if I'm not working on
There you go.
on work stuff.
I think that's how the whole crew goes, right? We all
Yeah.
kind of have our own little side projects. I mean, that was how I knew that Eric was the real deal when he started talking about Strudel Doodle on Facebook. Like, I'm like, okay, so you're just playing, and you're not even building this to make money. You're building because you just have this passion for VR.
Actually, funny story about Strudel. The reason why I built it is because while the deal was happening about Sprawley being acquired by Digital Domain, I kind of had my hands tied for a little bit. I couldn't really work on the app because I couldn't really move the code base for fear of bugs that would, some investor would see or some person at DD would see and be like, oh, no, it's broken. So it was working. I didn't touch it. And I couldn't be working on deals because obviously anything of that would be rolled over into DD. So I was just losing my mind. So I built Strudel Doodle. I built Strudel Doodle just purely out of like nervous energy. Strudel is this 3D construction tool, originally for the Vive. It's out on the Steam store.
Aaron's been telling me all about it.
It's fun. Unfortunately, I've been letting the Steam version languish a little bit because I've been really, really focused on the AR version. Right now it's out for iOS. It's about to be coming out for Android with some totally incredible new features. Basically what it is, it lets people, again, same theme, lets people with zero understanding and zero experience working in VR or even with art just build stuff. It's sort of like the AR or VR equivalent of Play-Doh, right? Every single time you build something with Play-Doh, you make something that's good enough.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to sit down and think and learn how to use Play-Doh first and take classes. No, you open the tube, you pop it out, you make something, you're like, hey, look, I made a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Right? Well, that's what Strudel Doodle is like. And it makes it so that you can build stuff anywhere you are with your phone and then share it straight onto the internet where you can have other people download it, use it in their own AR games, post it on Facebook, do whatever you want.
How did the name Strudel Doodle come into play?
So it's an extrusion-based modeling tool. So if you think about like that Play-Doh thing where you push something through like the spaghetti maker in Play-Doh, it's extruding the shapes out the other side. Strudel Doodle works the same way.
Well, I can say that I love the name, partially because I love apple strudel. I used to have a neighbor who was Austrian who made homemade apple strudel on random weekends, and talk about a home-cooked meal. It was really good.
So when I made the app, originally it was spelled with a U, Strudel, and I went out and I did a little bit of digging, and I found out that Pillsbury actually had an app that they put out like in 2004 called Strudel Doodler, which was that people could draw with icing on top of their Pillsbury strudel. So I changed the name of Strudel Doodle from STRU to STROODLE, DOODLE.
Gotta love copyrights.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's that Eric Nueman, those are those Eric Nueman brain cells, working, being, on the next level of where everything's at. So we've talked about NASA. We've talked about you, playing an integral part of fixing an issue down in Belize. Now let's kind of get into, the tech solutions that you've pretty much built for every major industry out there. Specifically, let's talk about what you've done in music.
Well, originally my first startup, Decision Desk, was originally called Citizen Groove. And we were targeting specifically audio recording and other sorts of music school students. And we had created this app that made it possible for basically people to upload all of their content and for schools to sort of aggregate up the social capital of their famous alumni. Now, unfortunately, that app didn't quite pan out, which is why we ended up pivoting. But Citizen Groove did become Decision Desk. And Decision Desk went on to grow into being the first company that really brought video auditions to performing arts colleges. So there are hundreds of thousands, almost 1 million students out there that got into school by applying to their music school through Decision Desk.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, it's totally a trip when I'm talking to somebody and they're like, "Oh, you worked at Decision Desk? I applied to school through that." Like, I didn't know there were people that did this.
My buddy JJ uses it for his program.
Oh, yeah?
Out in Virginia, yeah.
Cool, yeah, nice.
Are you asked to speak, at platforms, tech-based platforms, like where you'll do Q&As and, people can have the opportunity to speak to someone like yourself who's a well-respected, caveat in on the tech side of the platform in the world? Do you do those, or you're a fan of just more kind of building the assemblies kind of, in the home office?
No, I love to give talks and stuff. I feel like there are so few technologists that can sort of like communicate with machines and with people, and because I exist at the intersection of those two circles, I feel almost like an obligation to do so. So I take basically every opportunity that I can to go out and communicate, and just to show, like, just because you're a technologist doesn't mean you can't be a communicator too. In fact, I think the best technologists are good communicators.
Is there a platform for everybody listening right now, watching, for people, we put it out there for people to reach out to you if they have questions or they're interested to learn more about Eric, or maybe they want Eric to do some business with them? Can we give those ingredients out?
Yeah, definitely. Hit me up on Twitter. That's definitely the best way to find me. It's just Eric_Nueman. Always on there, always responding to stuff. Actually, I just got a question the other day about how the internals of Strudel work, and I just basically dumped out a pseudocode to this person and gave an explanation. He was like, "Great, I'm going to use this and go build my own app now."
There you go. So you really you care about your fan base when people are reaching out and asking for the proper ingredients to build up something similar to Strudel Doodle, or something that it would probably make you put a big smile on your face to see something incorporated and under the umbrella that you built out for the masses.
Absolutely. XR is, more than any other industry I've ever worked in, a high tide rises all boats situation. The more people building it, the more people working on it, the more people using it, the tighter and faster that virtuous cycle gets, and the stronger the community is going to be.
So I think we have a great community here in the Seattle area. I mean,
yeah.
It's amazing to me how many people that I run into that knows everyone else that's in the community. There's several different meetups. There's meetups here in Bellevue, meetups in Seattle. We've got some incredibly talented people. We're trying to get Eva in too.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
She's always super busy. So.
I know, that's the thing.
I'm sure Eric could help us now that he's been in our beautiful studio here and seeing our headquarters. That I'm sure that's easily one call away. So I have a kind of a question here to direct to both you guys to pose to both of you. What are your personal thoughts? Because it's no surprise, but everything with Facebook currently right now, everything that's going on with Facebook in terms of them getting into people's privacy settings, it's been going on for a while, but it's been making more noise. But for Eric, what are your thoughts? What do you think Zuckerberg ultimately needs to do to be able to escape what he's currently under right now?
So I'm a little conflicted about this because on the one hand, they're kind of shady. I mean, like the way that they collected that data from Android phones, like that was above and beyond what is normally accepted in terms of data collection. On the other hand, like I'm gonna show how 90s kid I am. Duh. Just like
right, yeah.
friggin' duh.
Yeah.
What did you guys think was going on? Like every time you install the app, every time you click on anything to join one of these systems, it gives you a list of the things they're using. And every time they make a change to increase to, glom up more data, they are required to notify you, and they do.
Yep.
So if you don't read that stuff and you don't pay attention, you sort of don't really have room to be angry about it.
Facebook has always been about connecting people. That's their motto, right? And they're going to do everything they can to get whatever information they can to connect people. I mean, that's why you have ads show up whenever you're interested in something new. The new ad shows up on your Facebook. I mean, it is kind of creepy at times where, like, I will be literally. I've had the experiences where I've had a conversation with someone about whatever random game or whatnot, and then all of a sudden that game shows up as an ad on Facebook. Like, oh, you were listening to me, but you know that going in, it's that dumb moment. Like there's nothing hidden there. Facebook doesn't hide it. It's very, very clear that they're always trying to get data, and they do that in order to make a better product. Yep. And the reality is they have made a better product because of it. We are more connected because of Facebook. We are more connected because they have all this information about us.
And especially with them owning Instagram. I mean, Instagram is, you see Instagram in some ways surpassing Facebook. I mean, a lot of people are more tracked to, watching people's, followers and building up that momentum around IG. So they're definitely in a situation that they have to climb out of fairly fast, or it could be not the prettiest day for Zuckerberg and the crew down there in California.
I don't think in the long term anyone's going to care. I mean, so do you guys remember? This was probably 4 or 5 years ago. The issue with Target and the lady that was pregnant.
I do.
Yes. Yeah. So just to recap, if you guys are younger on the thing here, right? So there was a lady that started getting stuff in the mail for like baby clothes and whatnot, and her dad got upset because. Why were they advertising that? And just based off of her shopping trends from what she
got outed.
She got outed just because of whatever, like she was buying vitamins or something like that. And Target had enough information about their consumers to know that when people start having these trends, it means they're pregnant. So let's start sending them baby stuff, right? And if you can figure that out based off of shopping trends, then of course when you're putting things into Facebook where you like this photo or you like this brand or you make some sort of statement or you upload an image and you know that Facebook scans all the images just to see faces. Well, if they can see faces, of course they can see everything else that's in your photos, right? And so it's just the proliferation of that is modern technology. That's the world we live in. If you don't want people to know your information, don't use Facebook, don't use Instagram, don't use Twitter. It's not just Facebook, it's any and everybody.
There you go. I think that answered the question, and hopefully people won't be affected by it. I think some people will and already have been, and hopefully they won't have future issues with those platforms. I thought it would be an interesting question, though, to raise on, because it is about tech. I mean, it definitely is, under the tech umbrella to a degree. I mean, it's technology.
I mean, I do want to say for anybody out there who's listening to this, who is concerned about this, I'm an Android user, not an iOS user, but like you actually have really fine-grained control of what you do and do not allow. So it's not even an all or nothing. You can go into your phone settings and say, Facebook wants this, don't let them have it. Facebook wants this, don't let them have that.
Yeah, you have the power.
You have the power. Just be aware of how your device works
And that's what-
and use the capabilities that are granted to you.
That's one of the big strengths on Android, right? I mean, Android has a way more customization than Apple allows. And then also, for people that are concerned about it, then yes, delete Facebook.
Yeah, take it off.
If you're
have to
concerned
do
about it, delete Facebook, delete your account, because that is the reality of what we live in today. Is this is how companies operate. There are other companies, FutureNet, right, that don't do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's plenty of social platforms out
Yes,
there
yes.
that don't do this, but the big players, that's how they make their money. It is the reality that you just have to be aware of what you're signing up for nowadays.
Yeah, and shout out to Ryan. Ryan's joined the show here twice. Ryan Conley and his whole crew here at FutureNet, and just the music platforms that we're going to be continuing to unveil for artists, and how they'll be able to ultimately keep more money in their pockets instead of signing big, record deals where they, barely get anything. I mean, it's kind of a pretty plaque to put up, in the living room at the house, but really doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. I want to kind of briefly here close it out because we have our next in studio guest here, DC. Someone that's definitely an integral part of it.
DC, you're getting behind the mic.
I'm told here from the show producer Erica and my assistant at DC. So DC, if you don't mind,
Jump in here, DC.
come on and take a seat here in this position, this microphone right here. What's your favorite XR experience, Eric?
Honestly, after even all of this time, it's still Tilt Brush. Like
that's good.
I love getting into VR and creating and just being like, just able to express myself completely without any kind of barriers. And it was one of the first things that came out, but they keep adding more and more quality stuff to it, and I can spend hours in there, so still Tilt Brush.
Tilt Brush is my number one. Robo Recall, number two.
You like that wave shooter?
Have you played Robo Recall?
Yeah, I've played it.
Of course. So I hated it. I hated the fact that Robo Recalls, you shoot robots, right? And in the very beginning, I'm not ruining anything, no spoilers, because this is the first 2 minutes of the game. The opening introduction sequence, you're around a bunch of robots that you're going to be shooting later because you've seen the preview, and they're all watching a TV, and then they turn at you. And I'm in VR. I'm like, okay, it's VR. It's fake. I'm not gonna jump, but it's not a scared jump. Like
Yeah.
I know what's about to happen.
Yeah.
But when you're in VR, you're in this other world, and your brain plays tricks on you. And I hated it because literally, when the robots jumped at me, my body couldn't help but jump. And I was like, no, I know it's fake, but we're in VR, and this is what happens. Yeah.
I'm sitting here. I'm rethinking. It might actually be Rec Room at this point.
Yeah.
Because I'm spending a lot of time in there. I'm increasingly even taking meetings in Rec Room. Like, how people would used to take
Sure.
golf meetings.
Yeah.
I take Frisbee golf meetings.
Okay.
So I'll just meet somebody and have a conversation over a round of Frisbee golf. And yeah, I think maybe it's Rec Room right now.
And I think that's part of it, right? That's part of where VR comes. Is VR can become a third space.
Right.
Right. And you
Right.
actually have some level of presence with the other person. Maybe you can't touch them, but they have space and depth, and you're there with them.
Yeah. And body gestures, like body language expresses so much more than you realize. When you get in there and you're looking at somebody that doesn't even look like them, but you can still feel their personality coming through, it's like, it's a different kind of thing.
Yep.
Any shout outs that you want to give here before we close out our tech session for Tech Tuesdays? Believe me, we got a lot of big. I don't know if anybody will be able to reach to your level, Eric, but I'm sure you'll be tuning in and watching us here at Studio 110.live. You'll be a future guest here on the show, and yes, you definitely will be. And getting continuing your pulse and your thought process on where tech is and where it needs to evolve to, not only here from downtown Bellevue, where Studio 110.live broadcasts every day, but from your personal thoughts. So I want to thank you for coming in the studio today as well. So
Yeah, sure. Well, I do have another appearance coming up this week on Sunday. I'm going to be on Gunter's Universe, which is one of those talk shows that happens inside of VR. It's happening inside of VR chat. That's on Sunday night, varying depending on where you are in the world because it's live.
Oh, you're gonna miss WrestleMania.
Sorry. But that'll be cool. And yeah, just everybody in the Seattle VR and XR community, keep it up. And hit me up on Twitter. I'd love to hear from everybody.
give that Twitter handle out again.
Yeah, it's Eric_Nueman with a regular U, not a W.
There you go. Thank you again, Eric, for taking the time to come into the show today. Thank you, Aaron, as well for being my co-host on Tech Tuesdays. Eric, our wonderful show producer here, is I know the calendar is definitely booked out. I know we have the inventor, I believe, or the father of the Xbox coming up. So we got a lot of exciting. I don't even like to give surprises out, but that just gives a little sneak preview on what's about to come up for Tech Tuesdays. My buddy DC here, if you can get closer to the mic here for me, it's a pleasure to have you finally on the air here with me.
I know.
We've been planning this for a while. We've been talking about this for a while, and you're definitely a well-renowned behind the scenes type of guy, not only in Seattle but California and I mean all over the world. I mean, you're a well-respected cameraman who has a human Rolodex that most people would die for. So.
You're so kind, my brother. So kind, man. It's very interesting because life happens in a way that you never really expect.
Yeah.
I met you a few years ago. It was a different event.
It was
in Seattle, and it was quite interesting. And here we are today, not knowing that we'll be sitting face to face having a conversation.
Like you said, I mean, you never know. You never know how you can reconnect. And I think as long as you don't burn bridges and you continue to show people with respect and gauge it properly, then you'll always have a kind of, and that's the way I kind of have always valued myself, is you'll always have that open door. One thing about DC, if you're just tuning in right now, it's Studio 110.live, my brand new live show Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time out here on the West Coast. There's not too many people, in the business that you're in, DC, that can really capture and continue to dominate the relationships that you continue to do. And one experience that I really admired and really looked up to you about was, everybody, if you haven't heard of it, I don't know where you've been, but there was a movie recently out that I'm sure everybody saw, a great movie called The Black Panther.
The Black Panther, yes.
And I want you to talk about the story because it's a great story how you and one of the leading actors in the fight scene of the movie, how you guys connected, and he flew out here and you brought him up here to our headquarters, and he was at Ebony Fashion Week, and so let's talk about that.
Yeah, that's really, first of all, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity. I don't take it for granted. I've known you for years.
Thank you.
But this is a platform that we continue to use to inspire people. And, you don't wake up and say, I want to inspire somebody. You just live your life.
Yep.
And hopefully that somebody can look up to you and learn something from you. But, it's interesting because it's Tech Tuesday. And you and I have never sat down to really talk about my history when it comes to technology and stuff. And I'm definitely going to pay respect to the fact that it's Tech Tuesday. So
and I want to touch on that too. I just kind of wanted to open up, and just because I think it's a really cool story on how you and a movie star connected just like that.
Yeah, it's as you know, I was born in Central Africa, and I grew up in Zambia. So one of my friends lives in Atlanta. Told me and said, "Hey, you know what? Have you seen the movie Black Panther?" I said, "Yeah, I just seen it yesterday." And he was like, actually, there's a guy from Zambia, and if you grew up in Zambia and Central Africa or Malawi or Zimbabwe or wherever, you kind of share the same culture, and you want to be a part of the community. So anybody who's succeeding in the community, you want to give them that support. And I was like, I have a little bit of a platform that I can use to help somebody who's in that position where you can.
You have the DC wiggle room. The DC wiggle room.
Right. So I called a few people who were like mutual friends, and I left a message. I told them, I said, if the gentleman is interested in reaching out to me, and we can share knowledge and things like that. And for sure, within a few minutes, he called me, and he works the same way that I work. When the opportunity comes knocking, you react. And
it's impressive, though. It really is.
So a couple of days later, he was on a flight, and he came, and we talked about how we can take advantage of the environment and the opportunity and actually help others. Because there's so many, in minority communities, there's so many people that don't have the opportunity that you wake up every day to be in a movie as big as Black Panther. And it really doesn't matter what role you played in a movie. You could be behind scenes, you could be doing all sorts of stuff. But the fact is, the experience that you gain from there and the platform that it provides for you, you can run away from there and just take off and just go do what you need to do. So that's the role that I kind of played for him, was to give him the opportunity to come and meet you and be on the scene, the Seattle scene, because technology is here, and we have all these relationships which you touched on.
You introduced him to the governor. You took him on a whole road trip here. He was at Ebony Fashion Week, and just the way that you illustrated the proper introduction at that event for Ebony Fashion Week. I mean, I watched. I was backstage, but I had an opportunity to just kind of peel my head out and just
Right.
watch people's facial reactions
Right.
when they brought him out. I mean, it was just like, wow. Like, you know.
It was really, really cool. And the good thing about it, we have the visuals. So, and you were there. So we kind of want to share with the community so they can see really what transpired. It was really, really cool. But when I had a conversation with him, my first thing that I asked him, I said, how serious are you about, helping others using your platform? And he looked straight into my eyes and he said, I've been waiting for years to do this. And I said, okay. So the first thing that we did was to take him to Olympia. I wanted him to have hands-on experience on how leadership is done. So we had an experience of just a lifetime, because at that time, they were just actually talking about that was an issue that we had across the country when there was a shooting and all that stuff, and the kids were lining up everywhere. So they were making policies at that time. So we had the experience of watching the senators and the House
legislation in the
making. So that was really cool for him to see, and I wanted him to actually take him to a table where conversations are made and resolutions are created. So that was important for me to do that. Then I brought him back to. This is Shumba we're talking about, by the way. Shout out to my friend Patrick Shumba. He was in Africa, was in Zambia, just came back actually. He is still can't believe what happened to him right after you saw him.
And maybe we can get him on. We can get him on either via phone or via one of our channels here in the studio, and you can come on and co-host with me.
Absolutely. And matter of fact, and I think it's okay for me to talk about it. He is in Avengers coming up.
Wow.
So
cool.
So he sent me some scenes from there. Yeah,
that's
I think
huge.
It comes out in April. Yeah, so it's really interesting. So
maybe we'll be able to get him back in the studio to talk about that.
Absolutely. I had a conversation with him last night, so he's excited to be here. I think you'll be one of the guys, the first ones to actually exclusively interview him.
I appreciate that, DC.
In the Northwest, yeah.
And for everybody that's just tuning in right now, I got my buddy DC, and DC is one of those guys. And believe me, I'm not joking when I say this. If there's like an event, and we just talked about this a couple days ago, like there's some events coming up in Los Angeles, New York, Miami.
Right.
He has the backstage passes for himself and I to be able to take my show out there and broadcast live in these arenas. So it really takes someone with the proper respect and understanding, and the level that you've built up for you and your business to be able to take my show or other national shows out to some of these arenas.
Yeah, it boils down to relationships. When you're in the industry, there are so many people who are good at what they do, even better than I do, or even greater than you do. But your integrity is going to be everything.
Sure.
To be able to maintain relationships with all these high-end clients that you may have, and sustain it over time, and that's where the niche of the business is. And I tell people coming up today, I said, you got to understand that the business changes, because when technology changes, the business changes as well.
Yep.
We were not talking about 360 cameras, but now we're able to use it.
Yeah.
To use the cameras, and we were not talking about 4K cameras a few years ago. But so what I'm trying to say is that when technology changes, you change with it.
You got to adapt. You
absolutely.
can't hide behind the curtain. I mean, if you hide behind the curtain, it'll swipe you. So.
Absolutely. And that's the opportunity that I use with a little bit of knowledge that I have when I work with different artists, like maybe they're athletes or even musicians. I break it down for them. Like, okay, you have Snapchat, you have Facebook, you have Instagram. Let me look you up. And I'll look at the platforms and see how, and you'll be surprised, because they'll have a different name over here, different name over there, on different platforms. It really doesn't work like that. So if you're trying to be found, you have to create the image.
Yeah.
And that begins from, you think of a name that you're going to sustain over time.
Right.
Then you need to know, back in the day Facebook was a thing, and now you got Instagram, really taking over.
Which is surpassing it.
Yeah, that's pretty much like your resume, because, you could be at an event and you're trying to interview someone. The first thing they'll ask is your Instagram or your Twitter, and they'll pull it up right away. So everything that you've done in the past, they'll be able to see it right there and then. And so I advise people, hey, make sure you stay on track with how the world is evolving. And that's before you even talk about the quality of your work.
Yeah.
It's a presentation.
Yep.
So.
What are some, well, I want to, before I ask the next question, you mentioned a good point, and
Right.
it's Tech Tuesdays here on the show.
Correct.
Let's talk about just kind of your thoughts on where tech is at here locally from, you know, where we broadcast from in downtown Bellevue, which is really
Right.
a tech capital for the tech platform.
Right.
But what are your like, what have you done on the tech side, and
Right.
where do you think tech needs to ultimately, you know, head, you know, sooner than later?
That's a great question because, you know, you didn't know that I come from the technical world. You know, I worked in the technical field for over 10 years. And the business
I do remember you and I
Yeah,
did talk about
yeah.
it. We talked about it up here at Studio 110 Live's
Absolutely,
headquarters,
absolutely.
but I'm glad you readdressed it with me so we could talk about it.
Yeah, so when I was in Malawi, I had the opportunity to work with a company that came from the UK, and they're looking for like top-notch, you know, networking infrastructure technicians, and I happened to be one of them. And the company was called Unipro. This was back in 90s actually. So I got trained on how to install fiber optics and Cat5, and you know, and that time in Africa, you know, technology was just being introduced. So I was fortunate enough to work for the government and worked on the projects to install the whole infrastructure for the government, and that was the spark for me. And
That's what caused it, huh?
Yeah, and when I came to the United States, and that's how I chose to be in Seattle, because I looked up a place where technology is actually really very engaging, and it was thriving. The Northwest has always been, you know, very involved, and so I created that opportunity so I could grow from that perspective. And so I've done a lot of different projects for, you know, all the way from Microsoft to the health industries, different health industries. I did a lot of customer support, which involved, you know, really building servers and building PCs from the scratch and things like that. But now, you know, technology changes again.
Oh,
so
yeah.
now you buy all
Every
those
day.
things directly. You don't have to have somebody sit down and physically cut the cables and, you know, configure the wires and stuff like that. So, but that created the practical experience that I needed. And that same experience is what I use today, because if I rely on software
Yeah,
when I edit
sure,
videos and
sure.
things like that. You know, can you imagine if I had to pay for everything that I do for someone to install
Oh,
the
it'd be a
software?
fortune.
Yeah,
Be a fortune.
you'll be broke before you take
Yeah,
off. So,
yeah.
so that gave me the leverage that I needed. You know, the information, and I always tell kids, education is a key, because you just never know how the integration is going to happen. You know, in real life, and same thing if I'm covering, say, the Seattle Seahawks or the Sounders. You know, when you're on the field, you can see hundreds of people
Yeah.
running around, and each person is doing a different thing.
Yep.
If it's cable, it's cable. If it's lighting, it's lighting. So
Production, sound.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when you think about production,
Yeah.
there are so many things that happen at the same time, and all these things, they have to go right at the very same time, because if one thing just goes wrong, then it affects the other.
Sure. So one little thing that could screw up everything.
Right.
So
Right. So it's really interesting, and having that experience for me gave me an advantage, because then I save money. I'm able to be efficient. You know, if I have an issue, you know, while filming, I'll be able to configure something real quickly.
Figure it out quickly, yeah.
real quickly, yeah. So instead of relying on somebody else, I always need help. You know, but
you're not afraid to ask
I'm
it,
not afraid- correct.
because if you don't ask for it, how, you know, people aren't mind readers. Yeah.
Absolutely. And just surrounding yourself with the right people. Like
Right.
you saw the guys, the guests that you had today, we all come from different, you know, backgrounds, different experiences, but
Correct.
we share something in common, which is technology. And,
Correct.
And humanity on top of that. So
What's the next big event, DC? My special guest here of the latter part of the half hour here at Studio
Yes.
110.live, my brand new show, Dirty Harry, back in the hot seat. So you cover the Sounders, you cover
Yes.
the NFL, you cover all the award shows, the corporate events.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're like I said, you're a very well-respected, well-renowned
thank you.
photographer and tech guy here in the community based here. But
Yes.
and I definitely see, you know, you're on the road a lot. So what's that next event coming up that you're excited about?
actually, there are a lot of events that I'm excited. And what really, most people ask me, like, how do you do this? And I tell them, you know, I do so many diverse different things, so much that when I switch from one event to another, it's like you're starting all over again.
Yeah. How do you prioritize ultimately? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, first of all, you look at who's paying the big bucks.
Yeah.
Well, you know, a little
Yeah.
bit. But the next big thing, I would say, is We Day.
Okay.
We Day, I've been involved with We Day since 2014 when they just started in Seattle. And they go, when they started, it was just, the first one was actually in Seattle. But now they've spread all across the country and all across Canada and the UK. So there's one coming up in California, I think on the 19th, if I'm not mistaken. And they have a huge lineup. They have.
I think you and I were talking about that.
Yes,
You showed me some of the pictures.
That's the one that you're supposed to be a part of.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we can work with your schedule.
Yeah, hopefully we can get the show out there, and I can broadcast live from Los Angeles. I used to broadcast from the Grammys and the red carpet and the Billboard Music Awards in Las Vegas at the MGM, and so I love doing those. I mean,
yeah, absolutely, and that would be a great platform for Studio 110 because, first of all, there's nothing bigger than that when it comes to the children, because what they do, they pack up the key arena with kids.
Yep.
The energy in the room is just very, very uplifting.
Yep.
I mean,
that's a great feeling too.
That's a great feeling, So that's what we're doing, and they have a lot of. I mean, California has a deep lineup. They have Morgan Freeman, Paul Abdul, Selena Gomez. Long list of a lineup.
And it sounds like if I take the show down there and we can get the whole crew to make that happen here for us, I'll be interviewing these people.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we have access. We have exclusive access to that. So that's really exciting, and it's exciting because it gives us the advantage platform, if you will, because we can talk about anything.
Correct.
And that's what it is. When you have that the independence of sharing anything that you can afford to share without anybody, telling you, speaking to you
in the front or
telling you in the ear, like, oh, you got to do this. So we are able to produce and actually put the stories just the way they are.
Great. That's the recipe. I mean, you can't ask for anything better than that.
Yeah, and then, of course, after that, we have the MTV Awards coming up and the BET Awards. And what's really interesting this year is that the MTV Awards are happening on Monday, and then the BET Awards starts literally like on Friday, so the same week.
And those are both where?
They're both in LA.
They're both in LA. Okay. Well, maybe you and I'll have to, do some Airbnb negotiating.
Absolutely.
Unless my crew here just books numerous hotel rooms.
Yeah.
And we'll have to just do a couple live remote shows in between, so we're not
that would be great.
Not missing any of these big time shows.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. And and I tell people, because most of the times, when you watch the flights. When there's something like BET Awards or MTV or Super Bowl, everything is hyped up.
Yep.
So
and we saw that with All-Star Weekend.
Yeah, All-Star Weekend was the same thing. Super Bowl was the same thing.
Yep.
But it was great. I can't forget about Super Bowl because it's one of the fantastic opportunities that we.
I heard you guys couldn't be outside. I heard you guys.
Oh my goodness!
It was like -2, right?
It was -2. It was. Was just. It was a great experience for me coming from Africa, my brother, and then going on this -2. I was like, no.
Yeah.
But it was a great experience. Minnesota was just. Minneapolis was a great city. People were just warm, and they had to show you where to go because we couldn't figure out how to move because
That's
it was
what I've heard.
cold.
Yeah, I've heard people over there are nice. So.
Yeah, but shout out to the NFL. The NFL has been, they've been good to us.
They've been very good to you and to us here at Studio 110 Live. Any shout outs that you want to give to anybody? I know you've got a lot. I don't know how you would even prioritize to give the people that they need to know.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Believe me, you're going to be a continued guest here. You'll be back.
Absolutely.
You'll be back off in DC.
Absolutely. First of all, it's I always want to thank God, for giving me the opportunity to give me all these experiences. The struggles that I've gone through as a person. Created the person that you're looking at right now.
There you go.
There was an old lady who told me something that I never forgot. She said, son, if the mountain was smooth, you couldn't climb it. And what that meant to me was that if you don't go through issues in life, it's not going to create the character that we need. The character is what forms who you are.
Right.
And because of that, I try to prioritize the most important things in my life. And that's my belief, my religious background, and my family. And speaking of my family, my daughter, you yet to meet her. She's
looking forward to meeting her. Looking forward to meeting the whole DC family.
You've met Grace, but you have to meet my daughter as well.
We'll have to bring them. The next time you're on the air, I want the whole DC the DC crew in here. So
that's right. So definitely, I can't forget about my family.
Yes,
I'm blessed with a lot of friends, such as yourself. Ryan.
Thank you.
Aaron. Cristiano, all these guys, they're all different in their own ways,
Yep.
And to me, that's what I really treasure. It's
Me too.
The ability for us to integrate, all our differences in how we are raised and our experience in lives.
Because that's what it's about.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Definitely, I can't forget my sponsors, FutureNet, I mean, it's a long list, like I said, you know. But definitely, I want to acknowledge the NFL for the opportunity, the Seattle Sounders, you know, the UW Huskies for all the opportunities that they give us. We don't take it for granted because we understand that all those are prime opportunities, and so we definitely appreciate that. The BET Awards, MTV Awards. We can't forget about that. So,
We did, yep.
Yeah, so basically all our sponsors and all our friends out there, and thank you so much for those of you who are watching from home and listening to this podcast. We appreciate you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, and thank you again, DC, for coming in. I look forward to having you back on the show. Shout out to DC's family and everybody that I met through DC's inner working deals that have helped me out and my new show here at Studio 110.live. I want to thank my show producer and assistant, Erica, outside of the studio right now handling some business. And I want to shout out all my friends. I don't have time to start doing individual shout outs, but it's been a great show. I know we got a lot of other larger guests on the platform for the rest of the week. Until then, follow us on Instagram right now at studio110.live.
Studio 110, that's the place to be.
That's the place to be. My brand new live podcast show, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 Pacific Standard Time. We'll see you tomorrow, 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Good night, y'all.